Hi guys, today we're going to be looking at another video where we're going to be talking about career code hacking. And today I'm going to list 10 possible career paths that you can take as a developer. Hi guys, I'm Blaize Stewart. I am a Microsoft MVP and also a lifelong developer. You could help me out by liking this video and also subscribing to my channel here so that we can give you more great content in this line as well as lessons on how to do code. So this list grew out of a desire to explore many of the possible career paths that developers might take over the course of his or her career. And there really are probably more than I'm going to put in this list, but this list encompasses some of the more popular ones that one might do. So this list is not exhaustive, as I mentioned, but it also means that one might also change in his or her career. For instance, one might start off as a general developer and then specialize and then change course mid-career and then do something completely different later in his or her career. And all of these are completely valid career paths that one might take within the context of software development. And there is no one career path that one might follow. So let's dive in and talk about what some of these are. The first on this list is front-end developers. This is a fairly common one for a lot of developers to do, and this would include developers who work on things like mobile applications for things like phones and tablets or websites or desktop applications. And front-end developers are responsible for producing the user interface that a user will interact with. And this means that the developer needs to understand user design principles and needs to have a good eye for aesthetics and needs to be able to make things easy to use and so on. So if that kind of thing appeals to you, then a front-end developer might be a good career path for you. And I know a number of developers who have gone down this route because they really love to have that artistic expression as well as the technical expression in the code. I've done a fair amount of front-end development in my career. However, I'm not very good at the aesthetic design of front ends, and I'm not very good at designing user-friendly applications. So this is one reason I try to avoid this particular category. I can do it if I have to, but most people that see my UIs and they go, "Oh, who designed this?" I said, "Well, I did it." And I have to kind of admit that I'm not the best one for this. So I typically will defer to people who are much better at design than I am to do this kind of work. So to complement the number one on our list, we have number two on our list, and that's a backend developer. A backend developer writes code that runs on a server. Now, the front-end developer writes code that runs on a client's device, such as a web browser or a phone, but the backend runs on a server, and it produces some kind of service that serves up some kind of data that is typically consumed by some kind of front-end application. So typically back-end developers are responsible for doing a lot of complex code because you typically don't want to put a lot of complex code on the front end. So the back end will typically handle a lot of that kind of heavy lifting of an in-end application that is needed for heavy compute. And if you enjoy the complex problems that you would solve with very complex code, that might be the kind of role that you would have inside of a backend development role, because you're going to be hitting all kinds of different kinds of databases, external services that your service is called. You're going to be aggregating a lot of things together. You're going to be massaging that and transforming data. You're going to be presenting that data in a way that a application can consume, and you're going to be doing a lot of these kinds of more complex problem solving skills inside of your code than what you might end up doing in a front-end application. So if that kind of work appeals to you, a back-end development role might be the one for you. Now, to support the front-end developers and the back-end developers, we need people that are experts in the field of data. And the next three roles I'm going to be talking about deal with this. So the first one in our next three roles, and number three on our list, is a database administrator. Database administrators combine aspects of systems administration, which don't always write code, with the ability to write code. The ability to write code in a DBA role or database administrator role involves writing code that runs in a database, typically in the form of something like SQL or structured query language. Now, this is a specialized language that's specifically designed to run in a database so that you can do things like get data in the database and out of the database, as well as tune the database so it operates at peak efficiency and speed, so the applications that are using that database are performant as well. I like to think of database administrators kind of like a person that likes to build and race cars, because what a database administrator tries to do is optimize a database engine to peak performance for the task it's designed for. You go into the database and you tweak settings and you adjust things at a very fine-grained detail to get the maximum performance out of that database for the task that you're trying to accomplish with it. You also need a attention to detail to do this job well. And the attention to detail in a database is important because most of the important data of an application is going to be stored in a database. So you need to be able to have a handle on the security of that database, the encryption of that database, the access of that database, as well as the way that data is being stored so that it can be easily used by the applications that are consuming it. So these are all the various kinds of things that go into a DBA role. So if that kind of thing appeals to you, you can definitely consider a DBA as a career path. Number 4 on our list is a data engineer. Now, this is a role distinct from a database administrator. A database administrator focuses on a database application or a database itself. A data engineer is about how you get data from one place to another and how you organize data so that it can be efficiently accessed and managed at large scales, typically across multiple different kinds of database technologies. A data engineer is all about designing a process for data to flow. So this goes from the time that the data is created all the way to the point that that data is used and then ultimately deleted or archived and everything in between. There's a lot of steps that are used in a data flow to make that data not only usable for applications, but also usable for the next one that we're going to talk about so that it can be used for querying that data and analyzing that data and understanding that data for the various kinds of applications that might precipitate from that. So a data engineer is fundamentally about process. So if that's something that appeals to you, a data engineer might be something that you will think about tapping into in your career as a developer. Number 5 on our list is another data-oriented thing that folks might do as a developer, and that's to become a data scientist. Now, a data scientist is a specific role inside of data because these guys are responsible for data analysis. So a database administrator works on databases and optimizing those and making sure that they're tuned and secure. A data engineer works on data process and flow of data. A data scientist works on analyzing data for information that they can extract out of that data that's not just obvious in that particular data set, whatever they might be dealing with. Data scientists are typically well-versed in mathematics as well as data, so they will understand statistical analysis as well as things like machine learning and AI. So what they're trying to do is look for patterns in the data that they can use to build artificial intelligence, that they can use to build machine learning models, that they can use to build statistical analysis to find correlations in particular data sets that might go to support a particular test that they're trying to perform against that data. There's a lot of things that data scientists can do with data. So if those kinds of things are very interesting to you, then data science might be a field to pursue because it's a very fascinating field where you can delve deep into data and try to understand that data in new ways that aren't so obvious when you look at the data just in its raw form. Number 6 on our list is an automation engineer role. Now, automation is very prevalent inside of software development. It's almost like a meta role to actually doing software development. So you typically have developers that are actually writing applications like front-end developers and back-end developers, and they're supported by folks like database administrators and data engineers. But there's a whole process that goes into making sure that code gets from the time that it is written to where it gets deployed. And that process is all done through automation. And that's where automation engineering comes into play. Automation engineering is similar to data engineering in that data engineering is about designing flows for data. Automation engineering is about building flows for code for a particular project or piece of software from beginning to end. And this includes not only writing code to build an application or application components. One needs to write automation for testing it, for packaging it, for deploying it, and even sometimes deploying the environment in which a code base might run. All of these these things are tasks that an automation engineer would do. And there's a lot of code that goes into this kind of development. And it's one of the most underappreciated forms of development that exists, but it is also one of the coolest ones, I think, because it can be a lot of fun to do because you get exposure to a lot of different technologies, and you have to have a fairly broad understanding of not only infrastructure, but code as well. So if you like to kind of operate across a lot of different technologies and understand how they work, and then write code to kind of glue them all together, this would be one of those job types that would appeal to that kind of individual. Number 7 on our list complements everyone else on this list, and that is a security engineer. A security engineer is responsible for the security of applications, data, and infrastructure. So there is a lot of things that go into this role, and that's one reason that has become almost an entire discipline in and of itself. And developers will sometimes take on this role in order to provide expertise for not only the applications that they've traditionally written, but also provide security expertise for the environments in which they run, as well as for the data that those applications are serving up. A security engineer is a special kind of person because they have to have a passion for securing systems. And I guess that's pretty obvious, but typically with developers aren't always concerned about security. They think security gets in the way of them doing their job. It slows down agility. It blocks access to needed kind of resources such as APIs or databases. And a security engineer, though, is there to make sure that the developers are doing their due diligence whenever it comes to making a system as secure as possible, so that the data that is sensitive in a database or inside of an application's memory or access to that data is not easily compromised. And a security engineer will often go through great lengths to make that happen. And it can be done with code as well. So there's a lot of kinds of code that goes into this for writing things like configuration files or scripts and automation that's typically done in the conjunction with automation engineering, and a lot of other things like this that need to go into making a system secure. So if that kind of work appeals to you and you have a passion for security, a security engineer might be a good option for you as a developer. Number 8 on our list is architecture, and an architect in the context of IT is somebody that is responsible for the overall design of a given system. Now, in architecture, we can talk about two different kinds of architects. We have what we call domain architects, which are typically going to be architects in a particular vertical, such as security architects, which talk about the security of an environment or an enterprise. You might have something like an application architect that is responsible for a specific application. You might also have something like a database architect that is responsible for the data architecture of an enterprise or an organization. And then you have some kinds of architects that are typically striped across those domains. And these would be things like solutions architects that try to build solutions that include data and security and networking and these other kinds of domains that we previously mentioned, or you might be an enterprise architect that looks at the overall methods and practices that an IT organization uses and tries to understand them at a very high level in that way. An architect is typically someone that likes to think big picture. Now, that doesn't mean that an architect can't have specific skills in a specific domain. Typically, an architect will be very well skilled in this particular domain, and they like to work in that domain. Maybe it's software development, maybe it's databases, but they like to think big picture beyond the realm of their particular technical domain and about everything that goes into making an application work and how everything kind of fits together so that they can have a holistic view of an application, and they like to design these kinds of things. So if big picture thinking is something that you like to do, then an architect or an architecture type role might be one that you as a developer can pursue in your career. Number 9 on our list is project management. Now, project management is a very important role in any software development process because it involves bringing together a bunch of different resources and trying to deliver something that is both technically excellent, but also on budget and on time. So a software project that's typically large will have multiple people working on that particular project. Typically, you will have an individual working on a particular component that is part of a team that is working on a particular feature or a particular domain. So you might have a team that works on backend development, or you might have a team that works on front-end development, and you might have a team that works on databases. And you need somebody that kind of brings all of these various teams together and helps bring about the particular components in a timely fashion and helps organize that work, not only at the team level, but also across teams, so that things can happen and people can work together and they can collaborate and they can ultimately get something done without a lot of impedance to the process or to the schedule, or without blowing a budget, or these kinds of things that typically impale projects whenever they don't have good project management applied to them. There's two things that this role typically requires, and the first one is an attention to detail. Now, an attention to detail is needed because a project manager is going to be managing a lot of resources. They're typically going to be managing people, time, and money. A people resource would be a developer, an individual, or team, and they have to figure out where people are going to plug in with specific skill sets to accomplish a particular task. Money is obviously going to be the budget that's allocated for a given project, and the time is the amount of time that's allocated for that particular project to be done in, so that deadlines are met and so on. And then maintaining the balance between all these different kinds of details is what a project manager does on a day-to-day basis, as what they do for their job. Another kind of non-written requirement for a project manager is a substantial amount of charisma, because inevitably on development projects, you're going to run into a lot of conflict. A conflict is going to emerge inevitably whenever you have people that have strong opinions about things coming together and trying to come up with a solution to a problem, and they might disagree on how that solution might happen. And sometimes the conflict can be very heated. What a project manager can do is help alleviate some of that conflict by getting people to work together to come to a consensus so that progress can be made on a particular project. And they are also good at removing roadblocks that would otherwise prevent progress from being made on a particular project as well. So that charisma is much needed for project management, because inevitably you're going to be dealing with people, and where there are people, there's going to be conflict. Number 10 on our list is sales or pre-sales. Now, a salesperson in a typical role is somebody that is trying to get another individual to buy a product. And fundamentally, that's what sales in software development is all about. But sales in software development is a little bit more nuanced because what it involves in the sales process. Part of the sales process of a software development company, or when you're selling software, involves doing analysis about a customer's existing applications and infrastructure and other types of things like that, so that you can help them better understand not only what you're trying to sell them, but how it integrates with what they're already doing. And that requires some skill. So a sales role inside of software development can be the actual salesperson themselves, but although that's not typically what happens, typically where the sales role of a engineer or software developer comes in is a sales engineer, where somebody might work with a particular team at a company for a given amount of time before a sale is actually inked, to do some analysis and also be able to do some consultative type work with that particular organization, so that they can help get a demo up and running, or that they can understand how to integrate a particular product into their existing ecosystem, whatever that might be. And these kinds of roles require some kind of technical ability that typically comes along with software development. So if the sales aspect of software development appeals to you, and you like to deal with new customers, and you like to try to make people happy, and you like to engage with new and exciting opportunities, sales engineering can be one of those ways to do that as a software developer. Sales people typically come with some level of charisma about them, and this is important for a sales engineer or a salesperson in general in IT as well. So if you like to deal with people to help make people comfortable with what they are about to buy or commit to, as well as demonstrate technical excellence for whatever it is you're doing, then a sales engineering role or a salesperson type role might be something that you as a developer can pursue in your career as well. The last one on our list is really a bonus. I said there would be 10 of these, and so this is actually the 11th one because it is a bonus type role because it stripes across everything that we've talked about so far. And that is training, instruction, teaching, or becoming a professor or something along those lines where you are teaching people about technology. Now, teaching about technology involves not only being an expert in technology, but it also involves understanding technology enough to where you can reduce it down to a level that folks can understand it and be able to learn how to use it in such a way that they themselves can become productive with that technology. There's a couple of things that instructors need to be able to do. One is the ability to understand technology that can be complex, then be able to reduce it down to some basics so that people that are interested in learning that technology can learn about it and pick it up and use it, learning from an instructor. The second thing it requires is the ability to speak clearly, to be able to communicate clearly, to be able to express one's idea in a very clear and concise way that engages the user so that they will be able to learn that. And the third thing that it requires is a desire to help people learn. So if you're not desiring to help folks learn, then instruction is going to get dull real fast, because one of the most rewarding things about teaching people about code is seeing the light come on and then helping them come along with you in that journey to becoming an expert in a particular technology so that they can be utilizing it for their applications or for their purposes, whatever those might be. So what do you think of the list? Is there something that you would have added that I left off, or is there something that I said that you don't agree with, or maybe you do agree with? Put that in the comments below and I'll be sure to engage you on that, because I do like having dialogue about these kinds of things so that I can learn about other people's perspectives as well. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our page so that you can get notifications when new content becomes available. And also, again, thanks for watching this video on Cool Enough to Code. We'll be posting more videos in this vein about career code hacking in the future, and we'll be seeing you again on our next edition of Cool Enough to Code. If you like this content, please consider liking this video, then clicking on the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel, then clicking on the bell notification icon and selecting all so that you'll get notifications when new content becomes available on our channel. You can also click on the share icon and share this video to any of your social media platforms. Sharing this helps make it more widely available for those who might be interested in coding. Also, consider following us on Twitter so you can see updates on Twitter whenever new content becomes available, as well as other announcements related to Cool Enough to Code. You can also help us out by becoming a patron on our page by going to our Patreon page at patreon.com/coolenoughToCode and then clicking on Become a Patron, and there you can find out more information about how you can support our work with Cool Enough to Code. And like always, you can check us out online at coolenoughToCode.com. There you can find a schedule of all of the upcoming lessons that we have. You can also find out more information and reach out to us online here. And you can also watch the live stream as it comes out each week on coolenoughToCode.com as well. And like always, thanks for watching this lesson on Cool Enough to Code.